Life's like a roller coaster. I love roller coasters. Except this one, your eyes are shut, not knowing what's coming next. A turn, a flip, a twist, who knows? The ride coming to an end. But the part that makes it fun is riding it with the people you love, friends and family. I've come a long way from childhood up until now, and know 95% of my success to my parents. I've always looked up to my dad as someone I aspire to be. He was my coach, he was my mentor, and he's with me step by step. Now, you probably ask yourself, why am I talking past tense? Well, last summer, one morning at 5 a.m. before work, I got a call from my mom, and I will never forget the shakiness in her voice. She said, "Your father's dead, Garrett." My dad passed away of a spontaneous heart attack, and the last time I talked to him was on Father's Day. He always taught me to be the best. Not number two, but number one. Second place is the first loser, he would always tell me. Now here's a clip from a movie called Talladega Nights to lighten up the mood a little bit.
You got the gift. Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
If you ain't first, you're last.
See you when you're grown up.
Dad! Come back!
I learned a lot about myself after my father's death, as that was the first major twist, you could say, on my roller coaster. And that was the first time I had to adapt to loss. Now, moving on to Cashton's book, what has been discussed really resonates with me because it helps me articulate what I've been learning about myself. The biggest concept of our textbook so far, I believe, is purpose. What is mine? Now, I'm 21 years old. I'm still a kid, at heart, at least. But I couldn't answer that question if I had depended on it. But giving it a shot, I would say my purpose is to better off others as others have bettered me off. An example of this is going back to my dad. My dad broke into his 401k and put me through Pepperdine. He was already struggling financially, but he still made it happen. When he told me I was going to Pepperdine, I started to tear up. Now, I'm a person who almost never cries, I swear. But I started to tear up and I gave him the biggest hug. Why? Because it meant the world to me that he did this for me. You know, a lot of parents would say, take a loan out, you'll be fine, he'll pay it off as you get older, it's life. But no, not my dad. He bettered me off. In return, I'm retaining a 3.65 GPA as an accounting major with a Spanish minor, with a job lined up, with a third base accounting firm in the world. I would say I made him happy. He would always brag about me, and Tanner as well, don't get me wrong. Also, in this picture, I am on the right, Tanner is on the left. Yes, I had a big curly hair when I was younger. But continuing, the financial sacrifice he made for me did not go in vain. And I think that is servant leadership, doing something that doesn't necessarily benefit you, but benefits others. He led me to a better future by helping me out tremendously. A moment in my life, which I know you can personally relate to, so you can understand what I'm talking about. When I bettered others off with pure joy was in Agilon. You know exactly what I mean. These kids almost have nothing to their name except the tiny community they call home. But every time I would show up with my fellow Pepperdine peers, they would go absolutely nuts. It's like I cured cancer in front of a room full of scientists. They went just ballistic. It was crazy. But their smiles would light up instantly, and they'd sprint to the bus and greet us and hug us and grab our hand to go play soccer or other games. By doing something so simple as showing up and having a good time, it meant the world to these kids, which gave me the biggest smile. It's hard to explain, but I know you can relate to me because you know what I'm talking about. But this is truly a wonderful feeling that we brought to those kids, and that to me is servant leadership. One example at least. Aside from my personal life, let us transition once more into this class. Starting off with my team, Cosec Consulting. Now this picture is not our logo, but it fits the picture pretty well, I think. It was me in Rio. Anyways, none of the three students in my group, Victor, Laura Lane, and McCabe, I knew before. I knew who they were, but I never talked to them in my life. So I definitely had to go out of my comfort zone to build these relationship bridges, you would say, in order to make this work. though we do work well together and complement each other quite well, for the most part, which I'll get into later. Now, what we want to do for a nonprofit, a financial literacy program, aligns pretty well with what Derek wanted to do, and that was sort of a good takeaway from the first meeting, not super clear though, which went very well though, the first meeting. We were well prepared. I knew Derek personally beforehand because he worked at EY, and I met him in the recruiting process. And we were just, bottom line, we were ready for the meeting. And also the fact that he was in this class a few years back, he knows exactly what we're dealing with and how to approach it. So knowing that he had this class 3 years ago was really beneficial to us. Though one concern was the end goal wasn't super clear by the end of the first meeting. He was kind of broad. He just says, oh, it's kind of like this year, kind of up in the air. Whatever you guys want, you can do. But on our, viewpoint, we really didn't know how to interpret that. But we eventually figured that out, as you know. But at first, we had an abstract idea, but not a clear goal. But like I just said, that is now figured out. Moving on to conflict, a more interesting topic, I could say. A question for you, Professor. Have you ever met someone that loves to talk the talk but hates to walk the walk? Because I have. And this was apparent from our first major deliverable, or the contract. Now, I am not someone to call people out, but I do hold people accountable. On top of that, I'm a fan of constructive criticism, but how do I go about engaging in that with someone I just met? That was the hard part of our group. And how did my group and I deal with this? Well, as the mature college students we are, we sent passive-aggressive text messages in the group chat when one person decided not to show up at all during the entirety of creating the contract. From this moment on, I knew I had to somehow influence that member to kind of change their work attitude and their outlook on my project, which they eventually picked up on. So that was good. But at first, that was an obvious issue. Though I must say, aside from conflict, a good side of this team is leadership. The clear leader of our group is McKay. From day one, she has been the backbone of this group. This girl has her together as a president of TriDel, or previous president, I'm sorry. She knows how to manage time well and has all the tools needed to make this team run very smoothly. She came out of the blue and said, okay, we're doing this, using this work plan, and doing this, and so forth. I mean, at first it seemed a bit bossy because it was very aggressive, but after a while, it worked. So if it works, why not use it, To conclude, my dad taught me a lot in life. He gave me the competitive edge I now have. He gave me the strive to be the best. He taught me how to be happy even when your roller coaster is turning and twisting and flipping. But more importantly, he taught me how to serve others. Not necessarily with money, but by bettering them off. I live a very healthy, fortunate life. And I wouldn't be here without everything that my dad did for me. All the sacrifice he made for me shows servant leadership in my book. I am already learning the value of this idea in this class through working with my client, as well as reading a book that dissects this idea of purpose and value. This class has taught me a lot so far, and they are very applicable concepts, and I'm looking forward to continuing this class. Thank you for listening.